we welcome this afternoon's webinar about building healthy connections. So focusing on where we're teaching relationships education through Jigsaw PSHE 3 to 11. I'm assuming that most people who are coming today are coming from Jigsaw schools, but if you're not, hopefully there'll still be some really useful content for you as well. Those of you who have come to the webinars may have been in touch with me or seen me before. My name is Sarah. I'm the program lead for the 3 to 11 PSHE program. And what we're going to cover today is looking at these things: what relationships education is, how to make it a whole school approach, what it's going to look like in practice for you in school using Jigsaw materials, and a little bit about what we've got to help you teach that with confidence. So as ever, please do use our chat function and ask any questions. I've got Becky here as well, helping to manage the chat, which I need because I'm not very good at multitasking. And we will definitely take questions at the end. What I will say is this is the first of a series of 3 webinars with RSHE. So this one is about the relationships education, the next one about puberty, and the last one about sex education. Relationships education content is huge in Jigsaw, so there is quite a lot in here. I've squeezed a lot in. We will be sending out a copy of the slides for you as well. So, you know, obviously, if you want to note things down, I know I like to write things down as I'm thinking, but we will be sending them out to you. So I'm not going to be reading everything that's on the slides, but you will be able to use them as a reference afterwards if that's any help for you. So I'm going to get started. As I said, we've got quite a lot to get through. But before part of this getting started actually is you can use the chat to maybe put your name and say, you know, how are any of these you want to say how confident you feel about teaching them? You know, are there any of these areas that you feel really confident about teaching? Are there any that you're not very confident about? If you don't want to share it in the chat, maybe just make a note for yourself because we'll return to these at the end. But they're all very different aspects about relationships. And you notice we've got relationships with the self right there at the beginning as well. And it's not the only types, but please do use the chat to share your any ideas or just note it down on a piece of paper. Give you just a minute to think about that. And anyone who's just arriving late, we're just having a think about how confident we feel about teaching about different types of relationships. And that certainly doesn't cover all of them as we'll look at today. So let's go on and have a look at what we mean by relationships education. So on a really basic level, you know, we know that relationships education is really important. It matters for every child every day, and it's threaded through, you know, everything that we're doing in school and beyond. Those healthy relationships that we have are really important, and we want children to understand what healthy, positive, and caring relationships look like, and safe relationships as well. And that's with ourselves as well as with others. They help us to build connections, and we know that's very, very important, that sense of belonging and all of those other things that go with it that help us to be happy and healthy and to succeed as well. And it's not just how to make friendships, but how to maintain those. And they're online and offline aspects as well, which we know are very much intertwined for children and young people as they grow, and for adults as well. And beyond that as well, it's also how to speak up. It's not just about having those and then being aware of them ourselves. It's also how to speak about them and get help, how to speak about the good things, but also understand when we need a bit of help. So what I've got here is I'm going to be looking a bit more depth about what those concepts might look like. I know a lot of the people who are watching this will be coming from schools in England. So I've actually drawn some of this from the new RSHE guidance. So what I'm saying here will link in, if you are looking at that, to what's in that guidance. But I'll show you as well, it also very much reflects guidance from other countries as well. So in primary school, we have a really important job. We are doing those building blocks. We are really looking about how we can develop those knowledge and skills. So we've got kindness, respect, safety, and managing all of the feelings about that. So what we're not doing is saying we're just going to teach a couple of lessons on relationships and that's it. We're building something which is much broader and much more important. So especially, I mean, this very much happens. We know in the early years, the PSED, that almost all of that, a huge amount of all of the expectations for early years is about building those relationships, understanding about ourselves and others. So we want to build positive and safe relationships. So those are ones which feel good, but also they build in that learning about boundaries, privacy, and rights over their own bodies. So those of you who are in England, you may have seen that the new guidance, may have looked at it in detail. There's a lot about safeguarding in there. So it's how do we link that relationships learning with that understanding about safety as well. And then that really prepares for what comes next. We are hearing a lot from schools at the moment who are sort of asking about how they teach about all these different aspects, but some of them are secondary aspects. And what we want to make sure is that through those building blocks, we're preparing for what comes next. What is it that children need to learn about relationships that's age appropriate now that is going to support them in later learning for later experiences in and out of school? And so those management of feelings and that critical thinking that we can start to build in is really important. So it's making sure, moving across now, that that's age appropriate. It can be very easy to introduce, to hear things in the news and to hear that we've got to deliver this, that, and the other. And I know sometimes people come to school and they've been on some training and heard that there's something that you must be teaching, and you might worry that you're meant to be doing it. Go back to the guidance wherever you are, whichever country, and look at what actually is expected, because that's been thought through carefully about what is appropriate for the ages that we are teaching in primary school. We want to make it protective. We don't want to frighten young people about relationships and about the wider world and cause anxiety. And it is a tricky balance to get. So through that as well, we want to make sure that all families are valued. So family relationships are really, really key in primary. They are in secondary as well, but we've got such a good opportunity to draw on what healthy family relationships look like, and to help children build on that to understand about other relationships as well. So we need to make sure that we're valuing all those structures. And through that, really involving parents as well. We're keeping parents informed about what we're doing and about sensitive content so that they can also continue to support that. We know that those relationships between home and school are really important in supporting children's learning. So as I said, a lot of that is drawn from the England content, but it's not just about, and it's not just about those topic standards, those ones on the right. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's a lot there you can see about relationships. But it's also, you will see that our guidance in England certainly looks at the importance of the wide range of family structures. So that is expected. So it's not only that we are recommending at Jigsaw, there are things that you are expected to be able to be teaching in England. You also need to make sure that within that relationships content, you're going to be enabling people to recognize different forms of abuse from a young age and to trust their instincts. So in order to do that, there's a certain level of teaching that we need to do about what do things feel like? What do we do if something doesn't feel right? Recognizing those physical and emotional feelings and what to do about it, and that we are protective and preventative. So that's really important. And as I said, it's reflected elsewhere. So if you look at the mandatory relationships content for Wales in the RSE code, there's a whole section on relationships and identity. And within that, you're looking at us again to look at the range of human relationships that we have, how identity can be shaped, and the importance of human rights as well in securing healthy, safe, and fulfilling relationships. So there's lots of aspects there, and you will see that reflected in lots of different parts of guidance. So how do we do that in Jigsaw? Well, what should that look like in practice? You want to take a whole school approach. I know we say whole school a lot, but it's really important. So you're going to have that spiral and progressive curriculum. So we're revisiting things. So the content that children may not have been ready for one year, some might have been ready, some of that cohort or class might not have been. When you revisit, they can really build on that. Also make sure that everyone understands what relationships education is about in your school. So, and that it's visible, assessed, and evaluated, that we are working out what works, what's important, what is supporting our children. How are we talking about it? How are we working out whether it's okay for our school community, whether it's what children need? So there are lots of tools that you can do to do that. By doing that, you then can build that consistent language and approach with all staff across the school. And through those discussions that you're having, you can start to build a shared script bank for tricky questions. We do get tricky questions, and so we can bring that knowledge together. There's going to be so much knowledge across all staff who are working with children in different ways across the school. And also be proactive in identifying links to other curriculum areas and policy and your pastoral support systems. There's so much that's going on, and I know that a lot of our jigsaw schools are constantly impressing us with how they do that. So when you are doing that, but be conscious of all the things you've got that feed in, and really and make sure you can build on that and use it. So there's a lot to do. So I'm going to look at what we do to help you and how we build that spiral curriculum so that you've got a really good starting point before you adapt it and make it suitable. We think it's really important. So we build it so that the pupils, if you're following Jigsaw, you're going to be revisiting themes and ideas, not only year to year, but as they go, through all the puzzles in the school. So we're not teaching relationships just as one-off lessons. We revisit them from different angles so they can draw together the learning. We know there's a whole unit on relationships which is coming up at the beginning of the summer term, and that's the green one on your on this snapshot, this is a new version of it, which hopefully some of you have seen, but it is through other areas as well. But just to have a look at the actual relationships puzzle, if you have a look at the relationships puzzle, you'll see this is very much, I would say, about relationships with other people as well. And it's really progressive, and starting with, in the early years with family life and just sort of the basic friendships. But then we start to build up and we add more and more content about physical contact, what qualities make a good friend, and as you go into key stage 2, we build on the friendship and conflict and look at how to keep safe online. And we're building those relationships about global citizenship as well. We're looking at expanding that right from what's immediately around the child to those wider relationships in our communities as well. So it's about building it up so that children can see those links. So when it's in that relationships puzzle, they see that these are all important relationships for them as well. We're going to come back to the content in a minute, but the actual approach that you use is helping with your relationships education. So just by using some of the aspects of the jigsaw lessons, you are already building your relationships education, helping and supporting children in their relationships. So just by using the jigsaw charter, the first of these 3 things, you've got a shared agreement. So children are starting to understand about different expectations, how to have safe conversations with each other, how to respect and listen to others in the class. So even just that is part of your building relationships education. And then the distancing techniques as well. So when we're talking about different types of relationships, we want to ensure that children feel confident and safe in discussing different scenarios, different things that may happen. So by giving them opportunities to discuss how a character might feel in a story or a jigsaw friend, we're allowing them to explore a little bit less self-consciously and explore situations that may not necessarily have happened to them, but may be similar to things that have happened to them without them feeling put on the spot as well. So there's none of that personal exposure. So that's a really supportive aspect of how we can teach relationships. And all of our teacher notes as well should be helping you to prepare for tricky questions. So, if you can continue to be positive and confident as a teacher by being prepared and just reading through the notes. I know we have a lot of notes. We don't expect you to sit and read them absolutely as they are. But if it's something a little bit tricky, use what's there. It's been designed to use things like the Ask Me This questions to help to structure those questions to support children's learning about relationships and model those positive interactions that really help to build them. As well as that, our lesson structure, it's good to be aware of people saying, well, what's the point of the lesson structure? Why have we got all of these different aspects? One of the reasons we have this lesson structure is to help children to build those relationships as well. So Connect Us is really key. All of those skills that children are learning in Connect Us are helping them to build relationships, those social skills that are so important. Our Calm Me time is also a chance for children to step back, to practice being with their own thoughts, to practice visualization and building their relationship with themselves as well. And then Open My Mind and Tell Me, Show Me, and Let Me Learn as well. There's lots of sharing of experiences, working together and applying that learning. And again, in Tell Me and Show Me, and often in Open My Mind as well, we might be explicitly modeling ways of saying things, how you might how you might be having a conversation, how you could have a conversation, what you might do in different situations that are support yourself and others. And again, in Help Me Reflect, we're really encouraging children to value their own learning. And that's, again, is part of building their relationship with themselves, how they can develop relationships and move forward. And all of those other whole school aspects that bring children together, building that sense of belonging as well, even the assemblies and the songs, it can really help to build that. So as I said, relationships aspect has a lot of content about specifically about different types of relationship. But throughout all of the other puzzles, we've got lots of focus that goes beyond that. So being me in my world, again, we've got belonging, our sense of community, our rights and responsibilities. These are really, really key aspects of children understanding their different relationships. I'm not going to go through and read all of those out. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. But throughout all of these, we're looking at values, we're looking at British values, we're looking at building self-esteem and social skills as, through the lesson structure and what we're doing. So being me in my world, as I said, that sense of belonging, where we fit in, is really, really key for children to build their relationship with themselves and others around them. And things like children's rights really come in there as well, particularly in Key Stage 2, United Nations Charter for the Rights of the Child. That's a really important reflective tool, really great awareness about where children fit in and why relationships with themselves and others matter. Celebrating difference, of course, we're looking at valuing different people and the importance that you are valued by other people as well, and understanding that we are all different and that's okay. So that's a really important part of what we do. Dreams and goals is a really important one when we're looking about, again, our relationships and our own self-identity, building on what's in celebrating difference, our personal strengths, managing different feelings in different situations. The ambition, disappointment, success. We know that those feelings come very much through our relationships with others as well. And in Healthy Me, the emotional health and well-being and the links to physical health, and understanding those links between, physical health, if you're not feeling well, that your relationships, could be affected as well. So those things come in. And of course, our relationships, we're going to look at some examples. I would say our relationships content is where we look most about specific different types of relationships where children are explicitly learning about it. And we're going to look at some examples of that in just a minute. But we're building on this very gently, but revisiting it all the way through. So things like attraction, we're not building on that when that doesn't introduce till upper Key Stage 2, for example, but certainly aspects like assertiveness we are building from the early years onwards. And again, Changing Me, very much about, there's a lot in there about relationships, about and also our relationship with ourselves and how that changes, certainly in puberty, understanding about how we grow from young to old, how we may change, how our friendships may change, and of course that transition to secondary. And if you want more on those aspects in Jigsaw Plus, there's a couple of lessons on changing relationships, hormones and puberty. And there's also a lesson on democracy in there, which again fits in with that belonging aspect and ideas of how you could extend that in assemblies as well on that. So it brings it together. So when we talk about that progression, I've just picked out an example which you may have seen before, online safety and awareness. We're talking about our own identity and understanding about privacy. So I picked this out because it's not an obvious relationships piece of content, but actually be understanding that you have rights, that you have your own identity is one aspect of our relationships with ourselves and others, and knowing and being able to have critical thinking about when somebody's asking you for information about whether that's a healthy relationship or not. So these are also different aspects of relationships. So we build that in Key Stage 1. Children are recognizing the feelings in their bodies and when something might maybe just doesn't feel right, and that might be physical sensation or it might be an emotional feeling. They don't need to do it online at this stage, but it's important they've got those foundation skills. And then we can develop that in lower Key Stage 2. So as they get sort of 7, 8 years old, they're building it across different contexts in lots of different puzzles. We're building on that with different scenarios and activity. And then when we get to upper Key Stage 2, then children are ready to apply that learning to more specific online scenarios about online situations, about privacy settings, location awareness. If somebody's asking you for details, is that a good thing? Is that a healthy thing? Who is this person? But without that basic learning earlier, it's very, very difficult for them to be able to fully engage in that. And again, that is going to then contribute in when they go to secondary school for more critical thinking, more aspects about online safety, using social media in an age-appropriate way. We know that more young people are online and engaging in more online activity. So just have a look at what's there. I'm just going to look at some of the progression, the examples. I'm going to whiz through these because there's so much in there. I don't know how many of you here are early years teachers. If you are not an early years teacher, it's worth going back and having a look at our materials for 3 to 5. There's lots of activities for Let Me Play, and it's really interesting seeing how important relationships is. So this example here is actually from Being Me in My World. But there's so much content there which is relevant to relationships, and every puzzle has this Let Me Play sheet, and of course all those play activities that they are doing in the early years are contributing to learning about different types of relationships, a lot of that through role play. But specifically what I pulled out there is the box from the snapshot that I showed you earlier for relationships, where also they're looking specifically at different family life and friendships and falling out and dealing with bullying and being a good friend, but all in an age appropriate way. When we get on to age 5 to 6, we're building on that. You may recognize, again, so I talked about the distancing techniques. So we're looking at different, these are the people from the planet from Zargon. We can look at different family structures and recognizing there are lots of different types of relationships. And what matters in a family is that people love and support each other. So, and there's some specific language in there as well to help you with discussing diverse families. Like, you may want to use, talk about, for some families, you might want to talk about adoption, about same-sex parents, or about single parents, but it's all done in a distanced way so that it's age appropriate and that children feel confident discussing the different characters they may see on the screen. Then we get up to ages 6 to 7. Again, we're still looking at different types of families. A bit more explicit, we're going to look at the physical contact lesson in a little bit more detail. We look at friendship and conflict, because conflict is a completely natural part of our relationships. So we want to acknowledge that and look at ways for managing it, managing the feelings and practical ways that we can deal with conflict to support us in our relationships. So we build all of that in, so it's not something that it's suddenly done as a one lesson sort of in upper key stage 2. It's very important that that's built in from an early age. And also things like expressing our appreciation and how to accept it when somebody shows their appreciation as well. So here we've got the family game. So we're starting with animals as a really good way of distancing it. And then we show images of different types of families as well. We can't show every single different type of family. It's not possible. There aren't enough slides to show that, and you haven't got enough time. We try and show as many different types so that children can recognize different families and then bring their own experience into that learning. We've got very specific lesson about inappropriate contact in year 2. These are some of the images from the lesson. We start with the connectors tracing game, where children are tracing letters on each other's hands with the finger. And then we do paired work about how we can use touch as a form of communication. And there are notes in there to support you, because there are some children who won't feel comfortable doing that. And we need to let children know that that's okay. Not just the children who don't like it, but the other children. So we're starting already to build in things about consent, and about what is and isn't okay, and that it's okay to say if you like a touch or you don't like a touch. That's all built into that lesson. How different kind and unkind touches make us feel, and the strategies that they could use if they find something is making them feel uncomfortable. And then in individual work, the children will draw around their hand and write on their handshake what touches they like and don't like. And you notice we use the word uncomfortable. It's not just about touches that hurt. It's not about touches that they don't like, but sometimes the touch, and everyone says, oh, it's such a lovely cuddle. You can even something like that. And actually they don't like it. And we want to give them the language and the support in how they can express it when they don't, as well as, of course, that safeguarding issue for when something is possibly a more problematic and they really need to be confident to speak up. We want to support them with that. So we really stress in that, again, safeguarding procedures for disclosures, because they may come up, but for most children it won't be safeguarding disclosures, but it's still a really important lesson. So then in ages 7 to 8, we build on that. We've got different scenarios that are relevant to children's age and stage. So this is an example where we know a lot of children that age are going for sleepovers. But you can adapt these lessons, of course, to suit the children in your class. So there is some content in there about online safety and online behavior in ages 7 to 8. We've made it as age appropriate as we can. We don't want to normalize online relationships too much, but we also acknowledge that a lot of children are online. But you know your children, you can go in and make those adaptations in the discussions, or you can put different things on the slides. So as you can see, there is quite a bit there about keeping safe online and media influence. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Talked about conflict resolution. So this is very much explored from ages 7 to 8 upwards with the Solve It Together technique, which is revisited in later year groups. Specific strategies are revisited across year groups so that children can build on them and revisit them and develop those. And it's interesting, I've been to a couple of schools recently, and we were at a school and the children were saying how useful they found the Solve It technique when they were on the playground. So really techniques that children can take and use now, as well as supporting them in the future. So example here, we've got going up to age 8 to 9, we focus on some more of those emotions. So jealousy, love and loss, memories of loved ones, and grief is in there. So there's a lot in there, but it's building on what's gone before and age appropriately looking about what we mean by girlfriends and boyfriends and how we can show appreciation to people and animals. And there's an example of one of the scenarios there and some of the pictures. Again, we're giving opportunities for children to develop strategies. It's not just telling them what healthy relationships look like and what they are. What strategies can they use to when they're in difficult situation? And so we give some, but actually your children may well come up with more. So so this is one of the things that we do. We don't want you to find you're in the lesson, you have one of those moments where you think, oh, we all have those moments where we know the answers, but they don't come to us. So what we are trying to do to help to increase your confidence is to give you a range of things so you can remember maybe some of the key things that you might want to remember to share with pupils to support them in their learning. And again, as I said, we've got the grief aspects in here. And we're also building in, you'll see the emotion vocabulary as well, because that's really, really key in our relationships. And that's the emotion with us, the relationship with ourselves as well as with other people. So the grief cycle is taught in year 4 and in year 6 as well. I know that's new certainly in the RSHE guidance in England, but we've had that in our materials for quite a while. And so there's some language in there to support you as a teacher with that. And Jazz's memory box again. So Jazz, what might he put in his memory box to remember somebody who's important to him? So it's that slight distancing, but understanding why it's important to hold on to those memories and how they might feel. And in ages 9 to 10 as well, we're building on self-recognition, self-esteem. Again, there's age 9 to 10 is where there is a lot of online relationships is looked at. There's a lot of online safety there about gaming and risks. And of course, a lot of this is about that interaction that children are having with other people, and also the feedback that they might be getting from playing those games about how they feel about themselves as well. And also the dangers of things like grooming as well. But it starts off with that first lesson, recognizing me about having an accurate picture of who I am as a person in terms of my characteristics and personal qualities. Because in order to have those healthy relationships with others, we do really need to start with that. And as just a reminder, you can change any of those parts of those lessons to support the children in your class. Very quickly as well, just online and digital relationships. We need to keep it age appropriate. So remember that digital life isn't just about social media and AI. It's about how we are all living. It's very easy to get sucked into just the social media and AI stuff that's in the news. So streaming platforms, the smart speakers, online banking, GP appointments. I know children aren't setting these up, but they're very aware of them. They're going on all the time, text messages, even the school platforms that they're looking, where there may be homework or information shared. These are all parts of digital of what's going on and the children are learning about. So we build those into the resources to help build that. So even if they don't have a phone or a social media account, these things are happening around them. and they are aware of them. So we try and build it in age appropriately. But you can go in and make notes in the lessons according to what you know, the different things that the children in your class are seeing. So relationships about how we treat each other online, how technology makes us feel is really key, about the safety, our own safety, and evaluating what we see and we read in the media as well. So all of those things have an impact on our relationships with ourselves and others. So that's all built in for you, a lot in that year group, but it is, as I said, it does start from age 7 to 8 as well. And age 10 to 11, it's built on, and again, but we're building on, there's a lot, a bit more specific about mental health and relationships with ourselves and others, more on love and loss, and power and control and assertiveness. There's a lot in there as well on that. And if you're teaching in Scotland as well, again, it builds again, really looking at how our friendships may be changing and how to develop positive relationships and what has an impact on those as well. Assertive, aggressive, passive, and looking at interactive games to do that. So through all of this, you want to be really proactive, share what's been taught, modeling positive relationships. You've got all of these things. You've got the knowledge organizers, you've got parent access, you've got your policy, and having really clear language, because sometimes parents are worried about what we're teaching in relationships because they're reading all of these things in the press. But actually, we find that 95% of the time we hear when parents come in and have a look at what's been taught, they're really reassured. So if you can share that and build those positive relationships and model those positive relationships, that will help the relationship teaching and help those consistent messages. You've got your pupil knowledge organizers on relationships as well, which can be really helpful for you to assess where children are and what they're learning, what more they would like to learn about. And again, use those parent teacher knowledge organizers that we've got. Somebody did spot that. We've got Healthy Me instead of relationships on the second page of that. We've put that right now. But yeah, so use those. We've got on the first page, you've got a summary of what's going on. That could be really useful for teachers. And on the second page, questions that parents can share with children to support their learning about relationships as well at home. So I'm sorry, I've run over by 2 minutes, but we'll have lots of time if anybody wants to ask any questions. What we want you to be able to do is we want you to teach with confidence. So use what we've got. We've built all of that content in, look at it, look at what we've got, and then be confident in saying, actually, our class could do a little bit more on this, our school need a bit more on that, and make changes where you need to. But the progression gives you that strong foundation. And then so that you can adapt it and look for opportunities to share that across the whole of the school community. I'm going to stop there because there's just so much, but hopefully that's a good summary of what's in there. Use the document to see what else is there. Contact us if you've got any questions. I don't know if any of you want to just revisit. I don't know how much help that's been and how confident you feel that you might be able to be in teaching with those using the materials that we've got. Have we got any questions, Becky?
Thank you, Sarah. That was really brilliant and really kind of focusing in on what we can offer at Jigsaw as well. So thank you for that.